Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. We continue our study of the book of Judges with chapter 18. We are in the middle of the very sorry and disturbing tale of the idol of Micah, the Pesel, the idol of Micah. Remember, we read of a man named Micah who had stolen money from his mother, eventually admitted to his mother that he had stolen it. He then they took the money and the silver and made out of it an idol. He found an itinerant Levite who needed a place to live and hired him as his priest and set up his own little temple, obviously separate from the appropriate tabernacle where only God was to be served. He had his own little thing going on. The verses are very clear that the purpose of this story, of telling this story, is just to give us an idea of the moral depravity and the descent into complete idol worship and chaos that had occurred during this time period. And in the first verse of chapter 18, we're going to read again of what the prophets here, what the verses here are teaching us, is the perceived cause and reason for this descent, and that is the lack of appropriate leadership. When there's no appropriate leadership or guidance, the people will sink into terrible moral depravity. And the extent, another thing that we're going to learn from this story as we read it, and this is really important, is that it's not just the worship of the idol that's an issue, although that's of course bad enough. But once you have polytheism, once you believe that an image is a god and that you can own a god, build a god, and worship to the god and somehow get favor from that god, and I mean God with a little g right now, then and it's not rather than morality and justice and righteousness being the approach. In other words, rather than ethical monotheism, which is what the one true God really wants from us. But when one descends into idolatry, one inevitably descends into immorality. And we're going to see the level of that immorality in chapter 18 as we read it today. By Yamim Oheim, this is verse 1, in those days, Ein Melech b'Yisrael, there was no king in Israel. Again, reminding us that there was no king, there was no leadership, so the people just went off on their merry way, which unfortunately led them to such low levels. Vayomim Oheim, and in those days, Shevet Hadoni, the tribe of Dan. And now it's unclear and it's debated as to whether the book of Judges is written in some sort of chronological order. It seems when it laid out the judges, the amount of years that they lived and judged for, there was some chronology to it. But these stories here, many of the commentaries say they're not necessarily in chronological order, but they're being laid out just saying different stories, different occurrences that happened during this time period of the judges before there was a king. Anyway, so the tribe of Dan was looking for a place to live. In other words, they hadn't yet completed conquering their territory. Because at that point, they hadn't yet received their portion among the tribes of Israel to inherit. So they were still trying to conquer land to live in. So, Vayishluchu v'nei Dan mi mishpachtam. So the people of Dan sent of their family, members of their tribe, Chamisha Anashim, 5 men, Miktsosam Anashim b'nei Chayil. These were from their ranks, men of war, so 5 warriors, strong men, trained warriors, Mitzorah me'Eshtaol, from the place of Tzorah and Eshtaol. Tzorah and Eshtaol are familiar to us as the places where the Shimshon, the story of Samson, which we just studied together, was from this neighborhood as well. L'ragel et haaretz, to search out the land, u'luchakra, and to do some recon, search it out, and figure out Vayom, and see which areas they can conquer, which areas they can take over. Vayomer aleim, l'chu chikru et haaretz. and they gave them the following task. The people of Dan gave these 5 men the task: go search out the land, and check out the area, see what places we can conquer, what places we can settle. Vayavo har Ephraim ad Beis Micha, and on their trip they passed through the mountains of Ephraim, and they passed by the house of Micah, where he had his idol set up and his whole little religion going on. Vayalinu sham, and they stayed there as they needed a place to stay when they were on their journey. Hema im Beis Micah. So while they were there near the house of Micah, staying there, Hema hikiru et kol hanar Levi, and they recognized and they heard the voice of the Levite. What does that mean? They understood. They heard his voice. Maybe they heard him. They heard him speaking, and they could tell that he was from somewhere else. He wasn't an Ephraim person. He must have had a different accent. Or maybe they heard him. It means that they heard him doing some kind of a song at worship, so they knew that there was something more than just him staying here, but he had a special a ritual role here. Vayasuru sham, so they turned over towards where this Levite was. Vayomrulo, and they said, Mi haviach alom, who brought you here? Why are you as a Levite hanging out here in this Ephraim area? Omata oseba ze amalachapa, what are you doing here? What purpose? For what purpose are you here? Vayomer aleim, and he said to them, Kazol v'chazeh, so on and so on. In other words, read the last chapter. And he told them, what he was doing there. Asali Micha, this is what Micah did for me. He hired me. Vayaskireni, he paid me. Va'ahila l'choin, so I became his priest. So now, Vayomerlo Shalna, oh, you're a man of God. You have access to this idol. Go and now, go ahead and ask God. Veneda, so we can find out hatatzliach darkenu, if we will be successful. Asher anachnu hochim aleh, on the path that we are now going. In other words, we're going to search out some land. We got a priest here. He can tell us whether we'll be successful on our mission. Vayomer lehem hakohen, and the priest said to them, L'chu l'shalom, go to peace on your mission. Nochach Adonai, opposite God. And remember, here he uses God's name. So the level at which he is right now is he's confabulating this idol that he set up with actual God himself. Go on darkachem, on the path asher tilchu ba, that you are going. Continue on this path. It's a good one. You will be successful. So the l'chu shalom is a go to peace, go and towards a peaceful path. So the confusion here between the real God and this idol is marked, and it's glaring, and we saw this in chapter 17 as well, that we know that God commanded the people not to make a pesel umasecha, not to make idols and images, but here we have the people thinking that idols and images are representations of God himself, reminding us very much of the golden calf and other sins that they had sinned before, but apparently did not learn the lesson. Vayelchu chameshes hanashim, and the 5 men went, vayavo'u loisha, and they came to a city called Laish. Vayiru et ha'am asher b'kirba, and they saw the nation, the people that lived in this town called Laish. Yoshevet lavetach, they were living securely. They had no worries. Kimishpat tzidonim, they lived like the customs of the tzidonim. So they must have been ethnically related to the people of Sidon. What was their ethnic background. Shoket uvoteach, they were living quietly and confidently. They had no worries, no enemies. They weren't well protected. Ve'ein machlim davar ba'aretz, and there was no one yoresh etzer. There was no one in the area to bother them, to overlord over them, and there was no Yoresh Etzer. There was no ruler that was hereditary. There was no one. There's various ways to interpret this word Yoresh Etzer. I'm going to go with what the JPS translates. There was no king over them and which typically would mean a king would be more powerful, would be and Shokeat Vetach. They were quiet and they were confident. They were peaceful people. The Torah, the verse here is very clear to make. It's very the emphasis here is that they were not a threat to no one. They were peaceful, calm people. They were a threat to no one, and no one was threatening to them, at least until the people of Dan came. Rechokim hema mitzidonim, and they were far away from the Sidonians who would have come to the aid of the people who were their ethnic brethren. So they had no real protection. V'davar ein lahem im adam. And again, it emphasizes they had no disputes with anyone. This was a very peaceful people. This is very important for a lot of reasons, but the main thing is that the verses are emphasizing this in order to emphasize the brutality of the Danites, of the people of Dan, for killing these people. It once again emphasizes the fact that the conquering of the land of Israel by the tribes is not a wanton, or was not supposed to be wanton genocide the way it is depicted by some people and the way some people think of. And we spoke about this when we studied Joshua. But if there is a peaceful people that are not a threat, then they were supposed to leave them alone and leave them at peace. And this chapter here is emphasizing this point and criticizing openly the people of Dan for conquering them, which is going to happen in the verses to come. They should have left them alone. They were a threat to no one. They were peaceful. They were nice. But unfortunately for them, being peaceful and nice and not having military alliances with anyone and being far away from their brethren who could have come to their aid in a bad time left them also very vulnerable to the type of attack that we're going to read about shortly. So these 5 spies came back to their brethren who were staying at those places, Tzara and Eshtaol. Vayomru lahem achem ma'atem. So their brethren, when they came back, the other members of the tribe of Dan came back and said, Ma'atem, how did it go with you guys? Vayomru, and they said, Kuma v'nala alehem. Let us go and attack them. Ki ra'inu es haaretz, we saw the land, v'nei tova mod, it's very good land. V'atem machshim, and you're sitting here quiet. Get going. Al te'atzlu, don't be lazy. Lalechet lavolo eshetzarat. Let's go and let's conquer the land. Now remember, in Joshua, and the idea of conquering the land was a valiant one, was a good one. But here it is taken as a bad thing that the people of Dan conquered them. And that is because of the emphasis that the previous verse made on the fact that these were peaceful people and not a threat to anyone. Kivoachem Tavo elam boteach, when you come with us to attack and conquer, you will come to a nation that is confident, via aretz rachvat yadayim. The people, boteach, that confident meaning confident and in their peace. They're not expecting an attack. They're not worried. They're not ready to defend themselves because they're peaceful and they're living fine and they don't think that there's any enemies out there. So we can just take them over right away. The land is wide and open. God has already put it in your hands, and they're saying this because the priest of Micah told them that God is with them and will make it successful. It's a place where you will lack for nothing. It's everything that you can possibly need in the land is there. And from the family of Dan, traveled out of that place from Tzara and Eshtaol, which is where they were. 600 men, chagur klei milchama, girded with weapons of war, ready to attack this town, this unsuspecting town. Vaya'alu vayachanu b'Kiryat Ye'arim b'Yehuda, and they went and they first camped in Kiryat Ye'arim, which is in Judah. which is in Judean territory. Akin Karula Makamuhu Machne Dan Ariyom Hazeh. The area where they camped is still called today the place where the Danites camped. Hine Acharei Kiryat Yarim, which is just past. Usually, past refers to the west of, because the sun sets in the west. So past that is just past to the west of Kiryat Yarim is the place where it's still called the place where the Danites camped. The people of Dan camped. Vayavru misham ha'Ephraim, and they kept going on their trip until they passed by the Ephraim, the mountainous region of Ephraim. Vayavo ad Beis Micha, and while they were passing through that area, they passed by again the house of Micah. So once again, of course, they encountered the temple where Micah had his idol set up, and where this priest from Levi, this Levite priest, was officiating. And now among these 600 soldiers was those 5 men who had originally been the original spies to spy out the land, and they said to the rest of them, Vayomru Elachem, they said to the rest of their brethren, Hayadatim, did you know, Ki yesh babatim ha'ela, that among these houses here in Ephraim, ephod utrafim, there's a place where there is an ephod. The ephod is an apron, which seems, and we saw this back by Gideon, where he made an ephod, an apron, out of precious metals and stones, is a significant item used in the service of idols. Utrafim and trafim are also items used in the service of idols. Ufesel, and an idol. Umasecha, and an image. V'atad umatasu. So now you over here in this area, there's a holy temple. Let's let you know what you got to do, right? In other words, it was understood that the temple will bring us good fortune. We need to take it. Vayasuru shama. So they went there. Vayavo el beit hanar halevi, and they went to the house where the Levite priest stayed, Beit Micha, the house where Micah was, Vayishalu lo l'shalom, and they greeted him in peace. They said, "Hi, how's it going?" V'sheish me'ot ish, and then so here you have 600 men, Chagurim klei milchamtam, about verse 16, that are girded with weapons of war, Nitzavim Pesach Hashar. So these 5 men come in and say, "Hi, how's it going?" in peace. Meanwhile, right behind them, you have 600 armed soldiers, which is not a very peaceful gesture. So in other words, hi, but look what we got behind us. Asher Mibnei Dan, those people, soldiers that were from the family of Dan. So these 5 men who had originally been the spies, Ba'u Shama, they went into the temple, Lakhu et pesel, and they took out of the temple, they stole the idol, Vieta ephod, and the apron, Vieta trafim, and the various items used in the temple there, Vieta masecha, and the graven image, Vihakoin, Nitzav Pesach Hashar, and they took all of the items while the priest was standing at the doorway. Obviously, he couldn't say anything because, as the verse reminds us, and the 600 men were standing there at the door that girded with weapons of war. So they're standing there with their swords and bows and arrows and shields, etc. And they supervised the looting of this temple. So, and they did this. They were standing there while the other men, the 5 men, went into the house of Micah, Vayikhu et pesel ephod, and they took all the items out of the home. So the priest says to them while they're doing, what are you doing? What's going on here? What are you doing? Be quiet. Put your hand over your mouth and shut up. Come with us. You can be a priest with us. We'll take all the stuff. We'll have a temple with us. You don't need to stay here. Would you rather stay here and be a priest for a house which is presided over by one guy, this Micah guy? Or would you rather be a priest to an entire tribe and an entire family of the people of Israel? Wouldn't you rather come with us? Wouldn't that you be so much better off? So the priest said, all right, well, here's the deal, they're right. I have 600 armed men. It's not like I have a choice anyway. But I'll go be a priest for a big crowd. So he picked up all of the items and brought them, and he went among the soldiers, among the nation, and here he is with them. And he abandoned Micah, who had been his protector, who had been paying him, who had given him a place to live. But now might makes right. There's so many things about this story that just are bothersome. It's hard to pick and choose which ones to emphasize, but they're obvious here. You start to sympathize here with Micah as if he's a good guy, even though he was a guy who made this idol and stole money from his mother. But now his whole enterprise is being stolen by the people of Dan. But what you really, really get a sense of is the depth to which the morality of the people has sunk. And that's really the point of this story. It's the point of this story. It's the point of the Shimshon story. It's the point of this entire book, to bring out to us just how low the people have come, just how bad things have become, and how mixed together idol worship is with immorality. And the story that will succeed this one, the next one we will read, will be even worse. And we're not finished this one yet because it gets worse. Vayifnu, vayelechu. So now the people, the soldiers, left the area with all of the stuff that they had stolen. Vayasimu et hatafi et hamikne et hakvudu lifnehem, and they put their children and cattle and their various items before them as they set off on their path. The commentaries point out that because they had the town behind them, they put their items that they needed to defend, the children and their kalim and their valuables, ahead of them, so that they would be between their children and the town, so that if the townspeople that they just stole there from were to come and attack them, they would be able to protect their things. So they were already distant on their road away from the house of Micah. So the people that lived in Micah's town were now upset. They just lost their temple, and they got together. Nizaku meaning they mustered together by Adbiku ad bnei Dan. So now they ran after the people of Dan to get their things back, to get their temple back and their God back. Vayikru al bnei Dan. And they called out once they reached, they ran, they caught up to the people of Dan. And once they got there, they called out to them by Yasebu Pineam. So the people of Dan turned around and saw behind them the people from Micah's town chasing them. And they said to Micah, what's up with you? Why did you muster everyone together as if you're going to fight a war with us? You took my God. The God that I made, you took. That whole statement is just theologically bizarre, but I don't even know how to. But this is where the people stood. V'atakoin, and this is the point. V'atakoin, you took my priest. V'atelcho, and you left. Umali od, what do I have left? You just impoverished me. This was my source of income. People came to pray, and they left donations, and you took it all. What do you mean asking me what is this for you? Like, why are you here? Obviously, I'm here because I want my things back. Vayomri b'nei Dan, and the people of Dan said to him the obvious: Al tashma kolcha imanu. Don't start calling out and start screaming at us. Get your head screwed on, buddy. Pen yivku uvachem anashim more nefesh, because some people might get upset with you and they might attack you. Just take your life with you, turn around, and go home. Because if you keep this up, we're going to kill you, basically. Not basically, that's what they said. We'll kill you and we'll kill your family. So either turn around and go back, or you're toast. So that was that. The people of Dan turned around and continued on the path. By Yar Micha, and Micha saw the obvious. They are stronger than him. They were all armed, ready to fight. So he really have much of a choice. Vayifen vayashav al beito, so he turned around and he went back home. And now the people of Dan, vehema lakhu et asher asa Micha, they took all of the images and idol worshipping supplies that Micah had made, Vieta Kohen Asher Hayelo, and the priest that he had with him, Vayavo al Laish, and they came and attacked the town of Laish. And again, this verse reminds us, Al Am Shoket, they came upon a nation that was quiet, Uvoteach, and unsuspecting. Vayaku Osam Leficharev, and they struck them all down by the sword, Vietoir Sarfu Beish, and they burnt the city down. The verse is clearly making it out that this was a brutal, unnecessary, and vicious and attack, and the verse describes it this way to emphasize the point that this was this was evil personified. This the immorality of this is beyond bad, and this is what happens when people think that this magical idol is God, and it just because you have these golden items and a priest to say whatever incantations and rituals over it will somehow give you power and success, which is what they believed. If that's the kind of God you believe in, then this is the kind of behavior you engage in. You'll be successful because you have this God. Meanwhile, you were successful because you attacked people that weren't fighters, that weren't ready to fight, that didn't deserve to be killed. Ve'ein matzil, there was no one to save these people. I'm reading verse 28. Ki rechoka hi mitzidon, because it was far away from Sidon where their brethren were. V'davar ein lahem imadam, they had nothing. They had no problems with other people. They had no fights. They had no quarrels. They were peaceful people. V'hiva emek asher lebeis rechov, it laid in the place where this Laish was in a valley of Beit Rechov. This is the place where the location of this town Laish. Vayivnu esoir vayeshuva, and then the people of Dan, after they burnt down the city, they rebuilt it for themselves. Vayeshuva, and they settled there. Vayikru Shem La'ir Dan, they named the city Dan, b'shem Dan Avim, after their forefather Dan, Asher Yulad li Yisrael, who was born, who was the son of Yisrael, meaning he was Jacob's son. V'ulam Laish Shem Yir Lo Rishona. However, Laish was its original name. Interestingly, the verse points this out, presumably to tell you that its real original name was Laish. It should never have been conquered by Dan and renamed Dan. Its original name, reminding us, know who was here before. Vayakimu lehem b'nei Dan et hapasel, and then, now that they won this battle, which wasn't much of a battle and not much to be proud of, they go ahead and they put up the pesel, the idol, Vihonason ben Gershom ben Menashe, and then who was the priest here? It was Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe. And interestingly, the rabbis point out that this word Menashe here, the way it's is written, the nun is written slightly above the word, so that when you look at the word, you see the word Moshe, Moses, and Gershom, as we know, was a son of Moshe, of Moses. So so basically, what the priests, the Levites here that were serving, and this Levite had been wandering around, was actually the descendant of Moses himself. Hu uvanav, he and his children, hayu kohanim l'shevet hadani ad yom gelos haaretz. They became priests for the Danite tribe until they went into exile, presumably when the Shevet, this tribe of Dan, went into exile many years later by the Assyrians. Now, so the descent of depravity to which the people had sunk was such that even those who you'd think would know better, people of illustrious lineage, had then become the leaders of this cult, this murderous cult, this violent cult, and this is the depth, and the purpose is you should feel depressed. you should feel that things have fallen apart. You should hope, and the way this chapter started, that there was no king, you should hope we need someone to stand up, lead the people in the right direction, point them the right way. That's what's necessary. That's what's needed. But we're not finished yet with the depression. Unfortunately, we still have more. And let's finish the verse right now with verse 31 of this chapter. Vayasimu lem et pesel Micah asher asa, and they made for them, they maintained for them the pesel Micah, the idol of Micah asher asa that he had made. Kol yimei hayos v'esolim b'Shilo. All of those days when the house of the true God, when the real tabernacle was standing in Shiloh, the people of Dan had their own place to worship, and that was the place of the idol of Micah. That concludes chapter 18. I usually end this by saying, looking forward to reading the next chapter and the rest of the book together. Unfortunately, if this wasn't bad enough, if the stories we've read weren't bad enough, we have even worse stories to come. But we will, of course, continue. This is important for us to go through these emotions and to go through this story to really, truly understand the progression of our history. Thank you so much for studying, and looking forward to studying chapter 19 together.